Can you share about how luminal elixirs support with the balancing of prana, tejas, and ojas?
Yes, this is one of my favorite branches of Ayurvedic medicine, which is Rasayana. And a lot of our constituents are Rasayana or rejuvenatives. So yeah, this is where I think Ayurvedic medicine is particularly juicy. So prana is cellular intelligence or cellular identity. It's what makes a cell know what it should be doing. That a neuron is a neuron and functions as a neuron. An immune cell is an immune cell and it functions as an immune cell. It also relates to the life force or universal energy because prana is also the breath. So again, life force, no breath equals death. So the sort of cellular prana comes from prana in the breath. And it is the refined essence of air or movement at the cellular level in the body. So you can kind of think of it as a more cellular version of vata, but again, dosha equals imbalanced or sullied. So vata dosha by nature is out of balance, but prana, you want prana imbalance. You don't want too much. That's going to cause, you don't want too much excess life force. It can cause like EMF, hypersensitivity, things like that, just being kind of like way too ramped up. But you definitely want enough prana because it's your vitality, it's your life force. I think it's also important to say that, again, with this idea of cellular intelligence, cancer is thought of as the first, in Ayurveda, the first thing to fall is that a cell loses its prana. It loses its cellular intelligence. It loses its identity as I am an ovarian cell, or I am an oocyte, whatever. I am a neuron. It loses its intelligence and it starts to replicate out of control. And that's how a tumor is formed or a cancer is formed. That's the first step in pathogenesis, according to Ayurveda, is loss of cellular prana in a certain cell. Tejas is the refined essence of heat. So it's cellular metabolism. It's what makes energy at the cellular level in the body. So Tejas really means light. So it also has an element of like the light of consciousness or intelligence, but it's more sharp and penetrating. So again, you can think of it being more of the refined essence of fire or heat at the cellular level. So similar to kind of a cellular expression of pitta, but they're not the same thing because they're definitely intrinsically different, but it's kind of the refined, more pure aspect of that cellular heat. It creates energy in the form of ATP in the cells, and it also detoxes, again, because it's burning away toxins, ama. And then Ojas is where I find it to be particularly juicy, pun intended. It's, again, I said earlier, it's the refined essence of what we eat. So in Ayurveda, from the time you eat something, for it to become Ojas, it takes 30 days or 28 or 30 days. It goes through all the tissue types. It has to metabolize, and then eventually it ends up in the reproductive tissues last, and then there it converts to Ojas. So it can be thought of as hormones. Well, in Chinese medicine, it's referred to as yin. Most people have heard of yin, so they're very similar concepts. Or soma is another name for it. But it can be thought of as hormones, fluids in the body, including sexual fluids in the body, immunoglobulins, antibodies. So it is critical for immune integrity. And it also, there's a specific type of ojas called para ojas that lives in the heart and regulates our heartbeat and our life force. And it also is, we all have an expendable amount and a limited amount of para ojas. And when your para ojas runs out, your heart stops, and that's what ends your life, according to Ayurveda. So ojas is life-giving. It preserves our life and our longevity, and it's dramatically depleted by modern society. Most people are, again, like I said, especially people with illness, are ojokshay or have depleted ojas. And a lot of people, another thing that can happen is when prana is out of whack, then tejas can increase, and tejas can burn ojas. So when Tejas burns Ojas, that is illustrated by chronic infections, autoimmunity. There's an element of Tejas burning Ojas in cancer, metastatic cancer. Obviously with how prevalent autoimmunity is, we always have to go back to building Ojas. You can have too much Ojas, but in our society, it's extremely rare. Most people are Ojo shy. And some people have too much Tejas, some people have not enough, but again, you want them all three to be in dynamic balance, because when one is off, if Ojas is depleted, it's probably being depleted by one of the others, or, there's this sort of unhappy chaos that can happen at the cellular level. And so focusing on building Ojas is the art of Ayurveda called rasayana, or rejuvenation. And it's a really important part of Ayurveda, especially for the chronically ill. And it's also where things are juicy and sweet and yummy. And it's my favorite brand, or my favorite branch of Ayurveda, we could say.
Okay, do you want to share any thoughts about how the different things, or how Lumina as a whole is affecting Pranas, Tejas, Ojas?
Yeah, I mean, so I would say that in Calm and Uplifted, there's a lot more constituents that are focused on building Ojas in particular, that are rasayana, because again, the things that we're trying to affect are conditions in which Ojas tends to be depleted. In the Sweet Relief, there are elements that definitely still are rasayana or building Ojas, but there is more focus on encouraging Prana and Tejas to become more into balance as well, because there needs to be more cellular intelligence, and there needs to be more likely detoxification at the cellular level, which again is part of Tejas's function, because that relates to pain in Ayurveda. And so there are still constituents that build Ojas, but there's a little bit more focus on the Prana and Tejas and that's why there's more heat and more especially heat within the Sweet Relief product, because we're working a little bit more on the Prana and the Tejas as well. And I should also say that when somebody has a pretty extreme chronic illness, like I've mentioned, cancer, but anytime there's actual tissue damage happening in the body, it's always a tridoshic process, and Prana, Tejas, and Ojas are always out of balance in that situation, which is when we have to get into more heavy lifting in terms of treatment.